Hello everyone and welcome back to another installment of Pekachow's Game Awards, the only Game Awards show that is consistently better than the actual Game Awards. This year in particular because this show set the bar in hell. Have you ever attended a special event just because you wanted to see someone important to you get like an award or something, but the show winds up being the most boring thing ever and you literally just wind up sticking around 3 to 4 hours just to watch your friend get the damn award? If so, you know exactly how I felt watching this Game Awards because I was just waiting for a certain someone to just come up and earn their award. Oh, and Gonzo was there too, and he was great, but like, he's just sandwiched in between this absolute nothing burger of a presentation. You need more than a few minutes of Gonzo to save your show, Jeff. Sorry for the little tangent, but I just had to go off on this year's Game Awards. It was so boring. I sat there 3 to 4 hours with only the occasional cool little announcement and Gonzo to break up the monotony of it all. But at least I got to see the Pikmin live, so I can't really complain. So now on to the real Game Awards of 2023, and by real Game Awards of 2023, I mean Game Awards of 2023, but literally anything goes as long as I played it. Yes, that's right. You heard that correctly. The only requirement to be a winner at the Pekachow's Game Awards is to be a game I played this year and also interesting enough to earn one of the 10 specifically chosen medals because I really wanted to talk about you. Of course, there'll be a few 2023 games on here, but let's face it, I'm not made of money. I can't buy every single game that comes out. I don't even own every single current gen console. I'm just here to talk about my own experiences. There are hundreds of other videos doing that exact thing, I can assure you, so I recommend you check one of those out if you're looking for a strictly 2023 coverage video, but please finish watching this one first, I'm begging. So if you're looking for something a little unconventional, something a little unpredictable, something more rigged than the actual Game Awards, this is your show. And without further ado, let's get into that first award, shall we? Our best presentation award goes to Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. So truth be told, I actually played Rainbow Curse for the first time last year, but I got it as a Christmas gift, along with a Wii U to actually play the thing on. I know, a Wii U in 2022, basically 2023, that's ridiculous. I don't know how I went so long without owning one of these things. Don't worry though, my Wii U's doing okay. It's just sitting there in the corner of my room collecting dust like all Wii U's do eventually. But anyways, I really wanted to give Rainbow Curse a chance to be featured in this video because quite frankly, it couldn't have been featured in last year's because I'm no content farm channel. I can't pump out content that fast. That's ridiculous. I had to get it out by the end of the new year and it was already a rushed video anyways. Christmas last year marked the point where I could finally say I have played every single Kirby game besides Kirby's Toy Box, but how the hell am I supposed to emulate most of these games? I played a few of them, give me that one. I could play Rainbow Curse because I finally got that Wii U, and I also got extra epic yarn because I passed on release and quickly regretted it as the game shot up in price because no one else was buying it either. This game was absolutely not worth the practically $150 I spent on it because I accidentally bought a European copy first I couldn't play because region locking. I don't want to harp on it for too long, but that game was absolutely not worth all that money. The game's main gimmick are these ravel abilities and they just feel like an insult to the game's original design and I just hate it so much. It makes my blood boil. God, this game is so lucky that it's still epic yarn at its core, but that's another topic for another video. Let's stop giving this game attention. The real star of the show here is Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, and as you can probably gather from the name, it's pretty similar to Kirby Canvas Curse. It's like a spiritual successor to that game, right down to the gameplay, which is extremely similar between both games. Kirby's stuck as a little helpless ball, and you need to guide him around using rainbow lines you draw on the touchscreen or the gamepad. Rainbow Curse does away with Canvas Curse's abilities, but it has all sorts of other little things in the gameplay that really make up for it. Whether it's the Star Dash that is just this all-powerful dash where Kirby just becomes this huge destructive force, but you have to get 100 point stars in order to activate it, or the vehicle transformations which kind of feel like a replacement but not really. They get kind of exhausted around the mid-game where it feels like almost every single other level is a vehicle stage, but overall I really enjoyed them. Kirby Rocket especially is just amazing. I love the Kirby Rocket levels so much, they're so good. Rainbow Curse's stages also just have more of an identity to them. There's no outright repeated themes like there was in Canvas Curse, and it makes all the stages feel a little more memorable as a result. And another thing that really helps exemplify that is the amount of unique gimmicks found all throughout the game. Some stages feature sand that you have to clear out by drawing rainbow lines over it. There are these Death Skulk enemies that show up in one stage that instantly kill Kirby if you touch them. There's another stage where you're chased down by this giant ship Bastron that shoots at you from the background, which makes for a surprisingly fun and engaging auto-scroller, and things just stay crazy up until the very end because one of the game's final levels just so happens to be one of its best, and it's called Kirby plus Kirby, and it's just pure bliss because you're controlling multiple Kirbys at the same time. time, and it's so good. And all of this is made even better because of the collectibles, because not only are they fun to collect, but they're just fun to engage with and interact with and look at. You've got a whole set of figurines, and all of them are just super cool to just admire. There's Eileen's diary pages, which are so charming and so cute. I love these so much. And this is the perfect segue into why I gave Rainbow Curse the Best Presentation Award, because there's also some unlockable music. But before we get to that unlockable music, let's get the elephant out of the room. Wait, this isn't the right award. I was saving that for the next one. Shit. Look at this game. It is beautiful. It is stunning. It perfectly captures the sort of claymation look it's trying to go for. And as someone who just loves clay and clay modeling and claymation as an art form, it's just some of the coolest stuff out there. Despite not actually being real clay models, they have all sorts of things that go into actual clay models that make them just look so authentic, like all the little imperfections and all the obvious fingerprints. They also have this sort of movement to them that just makes it feel like it's real claymation, and they're also just so expressive. It's just so good. I love this so much. But of course, there's more to a presentation than just the game's look, but don't worry, because Rainbow Curse absolutely delivers on the music too. It is one of the best Kirby soundtracks ever and an easy top 5er. I'm probably the last person you should go to if you want to understand the technical aspects of music and how that makes a song so great. All I know is that there's a bunch of bangers in here, including but not limited to The Great Cave Escape, The Wild Red Yonder, the Dark Crafter Battle Theme, any song associated with the Kirby Rocket, and of course, Rainbow Across the Sky, literally the best song in the soundtrack, one of the best Kirby songs ever, truly a masterpiece. And those are just the original songs. My favorite part of the soundtrack is actually all the unlockable remixes of songs from previous Kirby games you can unlock. These are incredible takes on these classic Kirby tracks, and I love so many of them, like Sky Tower, Ripple Field 2, Rainbow Resort, Moonlight Capital. We also got the best version of Crowned from Rainbow Curse, and that's not even going over my favorite of these remixes, which is Factory Inspection. I know, the 64 stand's favorite is Factory Inspection. Oh, what a surprise, but like seriously, Factory Inspection was one of the greatest Kirby songs ever. 64 still has the best version, but damn, this one cuts so close. Rainbow Curse is just an incredible package. It's super fun to play, but the thing that really ties it all together is just how good and on point and perfect the whole presentation is. It just makes the whole game even better. It's quickly risen up the ranks as one of my favorite Kirby spin-offs, right behind Air Ride. And despite the Wii U being in kind of a rough place in the modern day, Rainbow Curse made that big purchase all worth it. Our most refreshing award goes to Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, I'm certainly not the first to tell you this, but before Super Mario Bros. Wonder, 2D Mario was really stuck in a rut, and the saddest thing about that is that the last proper 2D Marios we got before Wonder were literally 10 years ago. In particular, I'm talking about New Super Mario Bros. 2 and U. Now, both of these games are perfectly fun and good Mario games, there's nothing wrong with that, but where my main problem arises is with the presentation and how that just makes these games feel so uninspired. We're using the same level themes and essentially the same graphics, but on different hardware that DS and Wii had. I really love those first two New Super Mario Bros. Games, and they are relatively clear in my mind, so it just doesn't really leave space for these other two to really flourish and have their own identity, and it makes them so hard for me to just really get into like I do with the first two. And that brings us to Mario Wonder, and it absolutely delivered. Let's get the elephant out of the room. Hey, I said the thing! I said the thing! Just look at Mario Wonder. It just looks so good. It's a far cry from that corporate look the New Super Mario Bros. Games had. The characters are incredibly expressive. Everything just pops with how colorful and vibrant the game's world is. It almost has this sort of 2D look to it despite being 3D, and it's just pure eye candy. It's a great looking game. But of course, the game has more than just the looks going for it, because on top of the fun as ever standard Mario gameplay, we get all sorts of new things thrown in there that just liven up the whole game and just make it so different than any Mario game before. The new power-ups Mario Wonder brings to the table are great, like the elephant fruit, which literally turns your character into an elephant and gives them elephant abilities. It's so weird, but it's so funny and perfect. Then there's the drill mushroom, and oh my god, is that Drill Kirby? And then there's my personal favorite, which is the bubble flower, and not only is it incredibly good at taking out small enemies, but it's so good for traversal too, because you can jump on these bubbles, and if you use it good in tandem with a badge, you can completely snap the game in half. It is absolutely busted if you can use it effectively. And speaking of badges, they're another really cool new addition to Mario Wonder. Badges are these things you can equip onto your character that give them all sorts of brand new properties, whether it be entire new moves, some helpful passive effects, or even some things that just exist purely to make the game more difficult. They're great, although I do think maybe they could use a little more polishing up by trimming down on the amount of those passive effect badges, because I really didn't care for most of those and they really aren't that good. I would have gladly taken more challenge or move-based badges. But regardless, the badges are really good, and they're a perfect modern evolution of the classic Mario formula. And then there's the Wonder Flower, which is this sort of power-up gimmick thing that completely changes the way you play the game when you pick them up. You never know what a Wonder Flower is going to do on your first time around, and it's part of the fun of Mario Wonder. Sometimes the gameplay will just completely shift, other times the level will be something completely different. It's just so good. Most of the game's Wonder effects are incredibly creative and fun too, and it just keeps that momentum rolling and makes Mario Wonder just such an unforgettable and fun experience. Even factoring out the Wonder effects, the level design in Mario Wonder is just fantastic. We have new original level themes again, whether it be twists on classic themes or completely new ones. We've got plenty of new gimmicks to play around with in these stages that help them all feel memorable and unique. And even the map design in Mario Wonder just blew me away. There's so many little things you can just find and explore in here. If you want a textbook definition on how to make an excellent world map, look at Sunbaked Desert. It's just masterful, and it's one of the main reasons why it's my favorite world in the game. And I'm only scratching the surface here. There's smaller stages that almost feel a little more like challenges than proper levels that help break up the regular Mario gameplay. There's the game's unique multiplayer, which sounds kind of lame at first, but actually is quite fun, and it feels nice helping out other players. I do still like the unhinged chaos of New Super Mario Bros. Multiplayer a little better, though. And then there's all the brand new faces this game introduces, whether it be the colorful and wacky new enemies, or the talking flowers. I love the talking flowers. If you turn these guys off, you have no soul. These guys are charming, they're funny. What's stopping you from being like the talking flower? These guys are perfect. Mario Wonder is the most creative 2D Mario we've had since the Mario Land games, which is crazy because those games are just so damn old. But really, I'm just pleased to have a 2D Mario on the same levels of creativity and originality as those two games, both of which I really do love, by the way. And don't get me wrong, Mario Wonder isn't perfect. Like, I think the bosses are pretty bad for the most part, and I do kind of wish there were like some additional modes to choose from, like maybe challenge mode from New Super Mario Bros. U. Really, that game's only contribution to society. But at the end of the day, Mario Wonder is just fantastic. It's quickly become my favorite 2D Mario, and I can see myself playing this one for many years to come. Our most replayable award goes to Gimmick, who unfortunately cannot be here right now, but don't worry. Got the special edition coming for Christmas, guys. Yippee! Yes, Gimmick. I already made an entire video talking about Gimmick earlier this year, but I just couldn't resist the chance to talk about it again. I'll try to keep things a little brief here for that reason, but do be sure to check out my full review on the game if you want some more in-depth thoughts. So why exactly am I giving Gimmick this award? Well, it's because Gimmick is just one of the most replayable games I've ever played, period. There are two reasons why I think Gimmick is just such an endlessly replayable game, and these two factors are its decently short length and its incredibly high skill ceiling. I don't know if this applies to anyone else, but starting out Gimmick for me was a little bit rough. There were all sorts of things I had to learn through dying and trial and error, like boss patterns, what certain enemies or hazards did. And then there's the star, which wasn't always the most reliable attack method and made things a little more difficult. And of course, there's also finding the collectibles for the true ending, but really, I don't think I was really worrying about that too much during my first playthrough because I didn't even know they existed up until like stage 4. It's those collectibles though that really did push me to replay the game so soon, because it's not like playing Gimmick is a huge undertaking or something, and I really wanted to see how the game ended. The thing is though, is that on top of finding all of these hidden collectibles, you need to go through the entire game without having a single game over, which makes things even more intense, but gives you a challenge and an incentive to just keep on playing and work towards that ending. I would just grind away at Gimmick and see how far I could take my attempts before I messed up, and I would engage with things like the items and fully explore all these stages. I was eventually able to make it through the game and see the true ending, but things just didn't stop there for me. You see, our hero Yumitaro has this star he can form above his head, and not only does it act as an attack, but a platform in the right scenario. Because if there's a wall, you could just bounce a star off of it and hop right on, and eventually Yumitaro will just ride his star bouncing throughout the stage. Just by doing something like watching a speedrun, or just looking for walls you can use to hop on your star, you can find all these little ways that the game can easily just be broken by using the star in the right spots. It's this star tech that makes Gimmick such an endlessly replayable experience, and it raises the skill ceiling so damn high. Everything about this star is just crazy, like the physics and the way it bounces, and it's insane to think this is on an NES. Gimmick is just one of the best aging NES games, period. One of those rare ones that feels like it aged almost perfectly. And of course, that's not all Gimmick has going for it. There's the presentation, there's the fun level design. There's just so much more to Gimmick that just makes it such a damn good game. But the thing that really makes it so special for me is its endless replayability. Once again, I'm trying to keep things a little brief here, so do check out my full review on the game, but absolutely check Gimmick out if you haven't. You got all sorts of ways to play it, whether you just want to emulate it or if you're interested in buying the special edition with all its little bonuses. Either way, check out Gimmick, hop on that Gimmick sweep, show my boy Yumitaro some love. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Our It's Better Than Nothing award goes to none other than Mighty number 9. It's better than nothing, they say. Or is it? Well, I gave it the It's Better Than Nothing award, so hey, I guess it is. Mighty number 9 was the other Wii U game I got for Christmas last year with Rainbow Curse, and, well, let me just preface this right here. I got this game as a joke. I thought it would be funny, and it did not disappoint. I definitely got a shitty Mega Man game. Now, I'm not even touching the Kickstarter here because that is an entire mess that has nothing to do with this. I played this game for the first time, like, last year. This year, basically. This has nothing to do with the Kickstarter, and this has everything to do with the fact that this game sucks. Where better to start with Mighty number 9 than... where do I even start with this? I guess the gameplay. The gameplay is just, like, fundamentally broken. I don't know how Inafune came up with the idea of just shooting at things and then dashing into them to kill them, but it just feels so counterintuitive for a Mega Man game. They're all about killing things using your bullets and your weapons, not about just dashing into your enemies and just getting yourself closer to the danger. I don't understand how they came up with something so backwards. Now, on paper, maybe this dashing sounds fun, like addictive, like popping bubble wrap addictive. But the game's level design is just not built with this in mind at all, and you'll just be dashing all over the place until something just comes to screw you over. It's just like a complete backwards mess, and I know I keep saying it's a Mega Man game, even though it's a Mighty number 9 game, but Inafune just wanted to make another Mega Man game without Capcom, let's just be real. And the game just feels so stuffed with all these little things, and it requires you to read up on all these tutorials and stuff, and honestly, I just did not care to read all the tutorials. I don't think a Mega Man game should have this much going on in it, that you need to read up on all these tutorials. There's all this talk about absorption and stuff, and I literally don't understand what most of this means. Maybe it's because I haven't played the game in, like, basically a year at this point, but like, I do not remember what any of this means. I do not care for any of this. And then there's all the characters who usually have incredibly annoying voices who just never shut up, like, please be quiet for one damn minute. And I know I already dissed the game's level design, but there's more to it than just it discouraging the game's dashing mechanic, because as a whole, it just sucks. The game's filled to the brim with cheap and frustrating and obnoxious moments. The second half of the highway stage in particular is very annoying. There's this part in the power plant stage that forces you to use this crouch dash thing, which I don't think the game ever tells you about, but hey, I guess that's why you're supposed to read up on your tutorials. And then there's also that one part in the underground mining stage where the whole game just lags while you're being chased by an insta-kill hazard, and it just sucks. I don't know if it runs better on like a PC or something more powerful, but on a Wii U, it's absolute hell. And all of this continues up until the very end of the game, because the game's final stage is just an amalgamation of everything wrong with this game's stage design, and the final boss is just this big, frustrating slog of a fight that I hate, and where better to end our discussion about Mighty number 9 than right here. While I was fighting this boss, my sanity was slowly crumbling away, but the game was also breaking, and I got to see it in real time, because I kept dying and took so long on this fight that eventually the final boss music started looping over itself, and it was desynced, and there were 2 tracks playing at the same time, and this continued all the way up until the very end of the game, and by the credits with the Mighty number 9 rap song, you know, the 4-hour credits, the Mighty number 9 rap song just started looping over itself, and there was desynced, and there were 2 separate Mighty number 9 rap songs playing, and it was just something to behold. Like, just listen to this. This game is literally held together with sticky notes. I cannot believe something like this actually released. Don't worry though, I will be pre-ordering the 3DS version at some point for the funnies. I sure hope this game doesn't blow up my 3DS. Mighty number 9 is some of the most fun you can have playing, and I seriously hope the next game I have to talk about here is actually good, because if it's another game like this, I think I might actually go and say, oh hey, it's Pikmin 4! Our Pikmin 4 award goes to Pikmin 4. Pikmin 4 was genuinely the most exciting release all year for me, which is saying something because we literally got a big Kirby title this year too. Although I sure wonder which game I like more, huh? It's probably Pikmin 4, guys. I think it might be Pikmin 4. We're better to start with Pikmin 4 than with the actual Pikmin themselves and how they're balanced. While I don't think any Pikmin game besides the first one has particularly great balancing, I do have to give 4 props for being able to balance its 8 whole main types better than 2 and 3 did with their 5. Of course, the balancing certainly has its issues, like some types like winged or white Pikmin feel particularly underutilized, while ones like purples or ice Pikmin, the latter of which get a ton of attention in this game because they're the big new type, feel a little overused and dominant. There are some genuinely great balancing additions here, with things like the fire starters being red Pikmin exclusive items, which finally give these guys some merits after they weren't really great in 2 or 3, or purple Pikmin being somewhat balanced by having their onion locked behind a pretty taxing chain of mid-game side quests that certainly does take some time to complete, which means it's gonna take some time for you to be able to grow a massive purple army, whether that be actually partaking in these little side activities or just grinding these guys from caves. While we're talking about the balancing, where better to talk about the game's big new addition in Ochi, your little dog companion. I love this guy. Ochi's awesome. He's great. And while upgrading Ochi can lead him to become something that is kind of game-breaking, something I like about Ochi is that he's not completely mandatory, and there's a lot you can do in the game without him. Like, take combat, for instance. If you want to just keep chucking Pikmin until your enemy dies and strategically whistle them back, you can do that, but if you'd rather just charge into them with Ochi and just basically insta-kill them, you can do that too. Ochi also gets a lot of great use in things like puzzles, and the fact that he can jump adds a lot of verticality to these areas, and there's some little platforming challenges you can find scattered throughout the game. Night missions are also a great new addition with their intense gameplay and atmosphere and usage of the glow Pikmin, which are mostly exclusive to this mode. They have a lot of really convenient abilities and are just super fun to use. These are two of 4's biggest additions that help it carve out its own identity separate from the first 3 games. And speaking of the first 3 games, Pikmin 4 feels like the ultimate Pikmin game with how it just takes the best from those 3 games and just melds them into itself. Pikmin 4's overworld areas are spacious just like 1 and 3's, and it's good stuff. There's so much to see here, and there's all sorts of great and memorable areas like the Serene Shores, Hero's Hideaway, or the Primordial Thicket. It feels good just getting immersed in these areas' atmosphere, and just exploring around them is so fun because there's so many things to find and do, so many different combat encounters. The verticality makes them even more fun to explore, and you'll be finding all sorts of treasures, and not just those, but caves as well, returning from Pikmin 2. Caves have always been like an integral part of the Pikmin experience for me, although maybe that's because I'm biased because I grew up on Pikmin 2, but it's great seeing them come back, although they are completely different from Pikmin 2's caves in a lot of ways, with the most notable one being that they're no longer randomly generated and actually have set designs with puzzles and stuff. They're a great new take on Pikmin 2's caves, and while I still do prefer Pikmin 2's randomly generated chaos, I can't help but love what 4's doing here. It's great stuff. There's also Dandori battles, which are in some caves, and it feels like this mix between Pikmin 2 and 3's battle modes. There's Dandori challenge caves, which are basically just Pikmin 3 mission mode stages, but in Pikmin 4, and if you want a more Pikmin 1-like experience, look no further than Olimar's Shipwreck Tale, which is a side mode you'll unlock during the mid-game. That's basically Pikmin 1 if it was in Pikmin 4, and you had half the days to complete everything. And you'll also get Moss instead of Ochi, and slowly learn she was not the homophobic dog we all thought she was. And while we're on the topic of Dandori, this game has it in spades. There's Dandori challenges, Dandori battles, literally Pikmin 1, items you can buy to increase your Dandori. Caves require Dandori because time actually moves in these caves very slightly. You can easily divide up tasks between you and Ochi, because Ochi is like a second captain with different abilities. You can move bases, which immediately teleports everything to another side of a map if it's right in the base area. There's so much you can do here, and it makes Pikmin 4 the perfect Pikmin experience, except there's a few little flaws here. Yeah, 4 is a few little annoyances like enemies not respawning on the overworlds, or the annoying auto lock-on being permanently turned on that hold the game back a little bit for me and still let 2 take the crown as my favorite Pikmin game, but I guess those are just things to learn for Pikmin 5, which please don't take another 10 years. Pikmin 4, though, is just a phenomenal experience. You have to check it out if you haven't. It's one of the best games that has come out all year. It's the main reason I stuck there and watched the Game Awards. You haven't lived unless you played Pikmin 4. Go buy it.
Our most improved award goes to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, specifically the DLC, because, let's face it, this game is actually 10 years old.
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass really did start out on the wrong foot last year because these first 2 waves were just not it. These first 4 cups were super inconsistent because you'd get something really good, then you'd get something that's just a butchering of its original counterpart from a previous game, and then you just get something that's straight ass. These tracks also didn't look great because they were clearly just imported from Tor, and there was like no attempt being made to hide that. They did not match the base game's art style. What is stopping this multi-billion-dollar company from putting a grass texture on this grass? It looks disgusting. Things did pick up with Wave 3, though, towards the end of the year, where it felt like the whole thing was just getting a lot more polished and it looked a lot better and it was more consistent. So obviously, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC just came into this year's swinging, and we got 3 really damn good waves that honestly makes the whole DLC just absolutely worth it. I'm not gonna analyze every single little track that came with these last 3 waves, but to go over some of the heavy hitters, starting with Wave 4, we got some great returning tracks in DK Summit and Waluigi Stadium, along with some great new tracks, or I guess they're from Tor, in the forms of Singapore Speedway, which is easily the best of the Tor cities, and Yoshi's Island, which is basically just a love letter to the original Yoshi's Island on SNES, and it's just a wonderful track, man. I love that game to bits, so seeing all the little details and references that pay homage to it was just an experience. It's one of my favorite tracks in the entire game. And speaking of favorites, Wave 5 is actually my favorite wave in the entire DLC. I know it's a little controversial and some people like to dunk on this one, but personally, I thought it was just really damn good, with the notable exception exception of Sunset Milds. Everyone has already trashed this track, I don't need to add on to that pile, but thankfully its cup was carried by strong tracks like Koopa Cape and Vancouver Velocity. But the other cup, though, the Feather Cup, is probably my favorite cup in the entire game. I mean, we got Athens Dash, which is a really damn good city track, and easily the most unique one out of the bunch. There's Daisy Cruiser, which is great, but probably the weakest course here. And then there's Moonview Highway, which is like my favorite Mario Kart track ever, and seeing it be remade so damn well in the DLC was just an experience. I loved seeing it come back. And the cup ends strong with Squeaky Clean Sprint, another brilliant original track up there with Yoshi's Island. So many little details and so much love was put into this course, and it shows. It is amazing. And this brings us to Wave 6, and while I think it's a tiny bit underwhelming compared to 4, 5, hell even 3, I still think it's a really great wave. Some highlights here include DK Mountain, which is loaded with so many fun turns and tricks, Bowser Castle 3, which really shows that you can turn an SNES course into something truly amazing if you just put the effort in. Please do this for all of them in the future, Nintendo. And of course, there's Wii Rainbow Road. What else would have capped off the DLC? We all saw it coming. It's intense, the presentation is great, it's incredibly fun with all its ramps and tricks, and it holds so much nostalgia value for me as someone who grew up playing Mario Kart Wii. It really was the perfect finale to this DLC to cement it as something truly great. That's not all I have to say about the DLC though, because starting in Wave 3, we started getting little bonuses with these waves too that were kind of like little updates. Wave 3 just kind of gave us this thing where we could toggle items on and off in versus mode, which was cool, but these latter waves really stepped it up because we started getting entire new characters. Some of my favorite inclusions include PD Piranha, Kamek, and of course Funky Kong. And who am I kidding? I'm only going to be playing as Dry Bones. Still. But it's great seeing the roster expanded like this, and we even got a little music player in Wave 6, which I mean you can just listen to these songs on YouTube, but hey, it's the thought that counts. The turnaround of the DLC was something to behold, especially with all the amazing tracks we got in some of the later waves, and I'm more than satisfied with everything we got. After Wave 2, because, let's face it, those first two could have been better.
Our Wow, I've been missing out award goes to Klonoa, Door to Phantom Isle, which it's not here because it's a very affordable game. Yeah, very affordable. I do have these Laughinies here. They kind of look like Klonoa, right?
It's both a surprise and not a surprise at all that I haven't gotten into the Klonoa series until recently by playing the first game a few months back. This series seems right on my alley because it is. It's just extremely Kirby core, and Klonoa is literally just a Lopenny. The series just feels like it was made to appeal to me specifically. The series is just so incredibly elusive and valuable at the same time, and I haven't really had the tools to smoothly emulate games more powerful than 32 bits until recently, and no, ignore the GBA games. And after playing the first game, I can safely say I was missing out on some good stuff here. Door to Phantom Isle specifically reminds me a lot of Kirby 64, which is only a good thing if you know me. They're both 2D platformers on 3D consoles that really push the 3D to its limits. You got things like dynamic camera angles, you have background elements on different layers that interact with the main layer you're playing on, and there are a ton of levels between these two games that just feel like big 3D environments that were made into 2D platformer stages. Klonoa in particular does a great job with this. Almost every single stage feels like that. Klonoa really pushes its 3D-ness even further than Kirby 64, mostly due to one main thing, and it's the wind ring and how it allows you to interact with the backgrounds and foregrounds of these stages. Klonoa uses this ring to pull in enemies and inflate them to use as projectiles, and something cool about this is you can actually press up and down in order to aim your shots in the background or the foreground. That's not the only thing this ring allows for, because when you have an enemy inflated, you can also use them to gain a little extra height. Klonoa's jump off the enemy not only allows him to gain extra height though, because the enemy gets sent downwards and acts like a downwards projectile, and not just that, but you can also chain multiple enemies together and get multiple bounces, and it's so cool. This ring just opens up so many possibilities, and it's so cool just playing around with it and seeing all the things you can do. This just leads to incredibly fun gameplay, and the entire game is just a blast from start to finish, because Klonoa and his main weapon are just so fun to play around with. That's not where my praises end though, because the game's visuals just hold up so insanely well. The environments are clearly PS1 environments, but they still look pretty good to this day and have a ton of charm, and the sprite work on all the characters just looks so damn good. I'm a sucker for sprites in 3D environments like this. Plus, the game's story is incredibly good, and it goes in places you would never expect a story for a game like this to go in. Like, I'm not gonna give anything away here because you really do have to experience this for yourself. But to not let Klonoa's facade do not let Klonoa's facade deceive you. Stay on your toes. Expect the unexpectable. And there really isn't much more I have to say. It's just an incredibly good platformer I missed out on for way too long, and I'm so glad I finally checked it out. So if you're a regular Pekachow viewer who therefore loves Kirby and Lopenny and is in that same boat that I was once in, do give Klonoa a shot. I officially endorse it.
Our immeasurable disappointment award goes to Mega Man 3. The robots are revolting, which I also don't have here with me today, but I do have another Mega Man-esque game that is quite revolting.
Name a better title to a video game than this. The robots are revolting. Yes, this game is absolutely revolting. This almost feels like Punching Down because I know this game was made by like one guy if I'm remembering correctly, but at the same time, Capcom released this game, so it's not really Punching Down now, is it? And I hate this game. It sucks. Every second playing this game was miserable. This is the worst game I played all year. I hate this game so much. I'm gladly tearing into this. I'm just gonna get my most petty criticism out of the way right now. Every single site I found hosting this game had it running at 2 times speed, and it just became nigh unplayable. I think there's something in the DOS menu that's supposed to turn it down to like normal speed, but it didn't work for me, and like I don't understand this DOS stuff, so maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I don't really know. As a matter of fact, I don't even know why I chose to play this game instead of just doing something better with my time, because I could have saved myself so much pain and torture and misery if I just chose not to play it at all. This is a petty criticism, I know, but I'm not trying to look at this game like objectively. I'm just trying to express my opinions and my experience here. We all have those games we love because of nostalgia, or where it's at least a big factor in why we love them or why it's such a special game to us. So I think looking at an external factor here that made my experience more miserable is more than fair. Besides, I don't think anyone cares. This is Mega Man 3, the robots are revolting. Does anyone actually enjoy this game? So now as to why this game actually sucks. Where better to start than with the level design itself, because oh my god, every single level in this game sucks. The level design philosophy here is literally just plop Mega Man. Is this even Mega Man or is this Mega Kid? This looks nothing like Mega Man. Okay, so backing up, Mega Man is just plopped into a giant maze every single time, and every single one of these stages is just a complete mess. Actual level design almost feels non-existent in these, and it's substituted for big open areas with nothing to do, except just wander around aimlessly, or tunnels you have to mindlessly crawl through until you find the way out. And whenever the game does try to throw legitimate platforming challenges at you, well, it's probably not that bad if you're playing the game at normal speed, but at 2 times speed, let me tell ya, you're in for a treat. The bosses really aren't much better because they all just feel extremely simple. They're a little frustrating at 2 times speed, but even at 2 times speed, you could just wail on them with the Buster, or even better, their weakness weapon, as long as you know how to do a few jumps in order to avoid taking some hits. Really, you could just tank a lot of what these guys do, though. They're just mind-numbingly easy. And if I'm remembering correctly, most of the weapons were just basic straight shots, but with different properties like, oh, this one's that robot master's weakness. This one does more damage. Great stuff. The gameplay is just fundamentally broken, and the presentation sucks too. I already dissed Mega Man Sprite. All the robot masters here are even worse than Mega Man because every single one of them is literally a palette swap or an edit of a robot master from a previous Mega Man game, all of which I'd rather be playing right now. On top of all of this, there's absolutely no music in this game, and you're just stuck listening to the sound effects, much like the first DOS game, which I think is pretty funny, although it prevents the game from even having good Mega Man music to salvage it. Let's go back to that previous Mega Man DOS game while we're at it, huh? That game sucks and I hate it, but I love it at the same time because it's just such a bizarre game. It's almost like a funny, bad sort of game, but it's not good. It definitely sucks. When you take the things that allow that game to be somewhat tolerable and replace it with maze levels, and also that miserable experience of being forced to play it at 2 times speed, you get something truly abysmal, and there's just nothing to redeem it anymore. The first DOS game has way better novelty to it, the level design is just objectively better, even if it isn't great, and this leaves Mega Man 3 in this weird spot where it's a shitty game that completely gets destroyed by another shitty game. Again, this feels like low-hanging fruit, it feels like Punching Down, but at the same time, this is one of the worst games I've ever played in my entire life, and I can think of multiple other garbage tier games I'd rather be playing than this, because at least they have some redeeming qualities. Even out of curiosity, stay far away from this, you will save yourself so much misery. If you really want to play a Mega Man DOS game, just go play the first one. And hopefully I never have to speak about this game again. So, what is a Mega Man 3, The Robots Are Revolting? Let's get into the good stuff! But first, I just want to give a quick shout out to a DLC that almost made it onto this list, but it released a little too close to the end of the year for my liking, and I didn't know whether to fully commit to trying to do that, because you know how I am with editing. Yep, I'm talking about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC. Now, this isn't a full-blown award, so I want to keep things a little brief here, but some things I do want to give a quick shout out to include the 2 massive new areas we have to explore in this DLC, the brand new characters and story that is told excellently between both parts, just like the base game, all the brand new and returning Pokemon included in this DLC, which makes the grand total in Scarlet and Violet around that 700-800 range. Plus, they also brought back a lot of my personal favorites, which is great, although Lopunny's still missing, so Zero 0 out of 10. There's also some little quality of life changes, and for a more random thing that I also really love, there's the synchro machine introduced in the Indigo disc, which just lets you play as one of your Pokemon. It's so fun just being able to explore the world as a Pokemon with all the different ways they move and all their little quirks. It's certainly not perfect, but it's just so much fun, and I couldn't ask for anything more. Like, if they're not going to give us a new mystery dungeon, more of this, please. But one absolutely inexcusable flaw is you can't play as Lopunny, 0 out of 10, but you can play as Primarina, and oh, look at her. Look at her. Alright, Game Freak, I'll reluctantly let you off the hook this time, but next time I want to see a fully textured Lopunny model, and I want to play as Lopunny too. I want to see it in the next game, and I want to see the next game whenever it's ready, because both of these DLC areas run pretty poorly, probably even worse than the base game, and I don't want another poorly optimized Pokemon situation going on. Much like with the base game, personally, I can look past these issues, even if I can still acknowledge them as pretty big issues with the product, but hopefully there's something we can learn from in the next game or the next generation. And regardless, despite the poor performance and the lack of Lopunny, I did enjoy the DLC overall. It gets me pretty pumped to see where the Pokemon series is gonna go from here, but hopefully next time Game Freak cooks, they don't take it out of the oven a little too early.
Pekachow's Game of the Year 2023 award goes to none other than, say it with me everyone, you already know what it is, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Oh yeah, Kirby!
I know, absolute shocker. Clicking onto this video, none of you saw it coming. Now, I've already made an hour-long video about Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and that was just me talking about the changes and new content Deluxe brought with it. If you want the main meat of Return to Dreamland, most of which still applies to Return to Dreamland Deluxe, add on another 40 minutes for a video I made even earlier than that this year. Yeah, not really a surprise, but I'm gonna keep things a little brief here, and I'll mostly be looking at some of Deluxe's newly added content because we've had over a decade with the original Return to Dreamland. We all know why it's such a fantastic game, so the question is, what changes does Deluxe make, and how does it expand and enhance the experience? To quickly cover some of the more general changes, obviously the game's graphics have improved. I'm not the biggest fan of the outlines, and I think them going fuzzier instead of harder on these outlines feels like them only going halfway, but the backgrounds are so full of detail and so pretty that they just completely carry the presentation despite my mixed thoughts on the outlines. They look incredible. And of course, there's the two brand new copy abilities, Mecha and Sand. Mecha feels a tiny bit unbalanced, but it's still a ton of fun to use. It covers a lot of elements with its super versatile moveset, and it just has a very powerful feeling moveset. I especially love some of the crazy over-the-top laser attacks. And then there's Sand, and I absolutely love Sand. It almost reminds me of Poison in a way. It's incredibly versatile, it captures sand as a concept so well, it's just a top-tier copy ability, I love it to death. The two biggest additions Deluxe brings to the table though are its two brand new modes, and to start with the slightly less hype of the two, we have Merry Magaland. Magaland acts like a celebration of Kirby sub-games from across the series, bringing back a handful of classic ones along with two brand new ones, and some of my favorites include Kirby on the Draw, Egg Catcher, the new Booming Blasters, which is like a scope shot replacement that's a little more fit to be a party game. Shoutouts to Smash Ride for becoming something genuinely good and functional here. And of course, there's Checkerboard Chase, undisputedly one of the best Kirby sub-games of all time, and the high-speed mode just makes it even better. All of the sub-games are of an immaculate quality though, and they're made even better thanks to all the missions you can partake in. They encourage you to tackle these sub-games in different ways, and you get rewarded with masks for doing some of these. Speaking of masks, they're like the main collectible in Magaland, which allow Kirby and friends to dress up like different characters from throughout the series. There's even some little deep-cut references in here too, which is just incredible. Magaland as a whole just feels like a big Kirby celebration, and not just that, but it turns Return to Dreamland Deluxe into a great party game too. It's an incredible mode, and I'm hoping to turn this into a multiplayer staple whenever anyone comes over to visit, or if me and my brother want to play a game sometime. Haven't really had too many opportunities to do it this year, but I'm hoping to change that next year. New Year's resolution. And speaking of incredible modes, Megalore Epilogue. Need I say more? The Megalore Epilogue tries something completely different with the Kirby formula by letting you play as Megalore, and as you go through the game, you'll unlock more skills and upgrade your own pre-existing skills in order to become stronger and work towards Magalore's redemption. The stages are fun. There's platinum medals you can work towards in every single stage and boss fight. The world map is incredibly interconnected with all sorts of little secrets to find. And the lore reveals towards the end are just absolutely insane. They go crazy. I'm not even going to elaborate any further if you haven't played the epilogue yourself, because you absolutely have to experience it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there's plenty of other smaller little changes, like the tweaks made to Extra Mode in the True Arena that just make it even better. And do keep in mind that this is all built off of the original Return to Dreamland, with all of its fun gameplay, its memorable story, its creative and memorable levels. Just about everything from that original game is intact here, and it's just expanded upon. Return to Dreamland Deluxe is just the perfect way to do a remaster. Return to Dreamland isn't really a game that's in desperate need of a remake, so in turn, Deluxe just goes nuts with all sorts of new additions that make the package absolutely worth it even if you played the game before, while still making improvements where they're necessary. Call me biased, I don't care. Return to Dreamland Deluxe is my favorite game of 2023, and my favorite game I played all year too. But that's probably not a surprise, huh? Yeah, much like last year's Game Awards, I figured I'd end this one on something a little more surprising. Although this time it's not going to be my favorite game I played this year because we already talked about that here. So I want to give this final award to the runner-up, my second favorite game I played all year. So without further ado...
And finally, to keep things interesting, Pekachow's Game of the Year 2023 award, non-Kirby edition, goes to Mega Man Battle Network 5 Team Proto Man. But this is the Legacy Collection. But you know it's on there. Or we could just count the Legacy Collection as a whole because, you know, it's one of the best deals on the market. And if you don't have it, you're missing out.
Yeah, you heard what that guy said. The Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection is one of the best deals on the market. And you should absolutely buy it if you don't have it because you are seriously missing out on a good-ass deal. You are getting your bang for your buck if you buy this game. You could take my word on it. I didn't even spend a penny on this game because I won it for free through an art. No, but seriously, my playtime between both volumes of the Legacy Collection is probably bordering on like 300 hours and I haven't even gotten to Battle Network 6 yet. I'll be starting it next year at some point. Between those first 5 games, though, my absolute favorite has to be Mega Man Battle Network 5, Team Proto Man specifically, because look at them. Something that made Battle Network 5 so special when I played it for the first time is that it felt like it finally toned down a little bit on the backtracking that heavily plagued 3 and 4 for me. Like, obviously, 5 does have its fair share of backtracking, but I don't really understand what people are saying when they complain about this game having, like, egregious backtracking. Maybe it's because the backtracking was used in a more interesting context. I would take Battle Network 5's backtracking over most of the backtracking in 3 and 4 any day, but really it's like a pick your poison situation because, let's face it, all the Battle Network games pad themselves out with backtracking in one way or another. Another thing about Battle Network 5 I found to be extremely refreshing was that the game actually had a story. Oh my god. Finally, a story in a Battle Network game after I played through Battle Network 4 3 times for 100% completion. Oh, finally some substance. 5's tone feels a little darker and more serious than the other games, which I actually do kind of dig, but my favorite thing about 5's plot has to be all the different characters you'll be meeting and recruiting throughout the game. And yeah, I'm specifically talking about Team Proto Man, as usual here, because I didn't play Team Colonel, and once I get to playing Team Colonel, it's not going to be the same because these guys have already stolen my heart. Not only does this team just have top-tier Navis in it like Proto Man, Medi, and Napalm Man, but just watching them interact and seeing them all together just kind of gets me into that weird fangirling state where I just can't stop thinking about them obsessively and I start coming up with my own, I think we are going a little too deep into this. But you know when a game's doing that, you know it's got me gripped good. If I had a nickel for every closing award winner at the Pekachow's Game Awards that got me into that weird fangirling state, I'd have 10 cents. But yeah, if that team camaraderie wasn't enough, all sorts of really cool things happen in this story. Like there's one chapter where Mega Man is actually put out of commission and corrupted and turned into Dark Mega Man, and you actually need to take control of Proto Man instead of Mega Man for a whole chapter. It's so cool. And while we're talking about other playable Navis, the final big refreshing thing that made Battle Network 5 such a breath of fresh air is the Liberation missions. I know they're divisive, but oh my god, these things are incredible. The Liberation missions turn Battle Network into a strategy game, and I don't care what anyone says, these things are amazing. You need to plan ahead, think about when to use your units and their special abilities. It's not just the strategy stuff that's super fun and challenging though, because the battles are as well. These Liberation battles have so many unique things going on in them. Like the 3-turn limit every fight has to be beaten in, which encourages smart folder building, the plethora of Navis you can play as with their own unique charge shots and chips, these big enemies that can pose a threat on the overworld as well as in battle, or how the layout of dark panels when you enter a battle can actually influence that battle by giving you less space or even forcing you to turn around. After beating Battle Network 4 3 times in a row, I cannot explain how refreshing this big of a gameplay change is. And not only are they refreshing, but they're just a ton of fun. And those certainly aren't the only things Battle Network 5 has to bring to the table. I actually enjoyed every single dungeon in this game, although I know some of them are a little contentious among the fan base. Dungeons were something I missed since 2 because it felt like 3 didn't really feature too many of them, and 400% half-assed all 3 of them. So it's great to finally have dungeons. They really do give you a feeling of progression, and I enjoyed the puzzles in each one. And on top of that, just the basic Battle Network gameplay it's as good as ever. In fact, it's better than ever. 5 takes a lot of things from 4 and just refines them beyond belief, like take Souls for instance. To clarify, I played Blue Moon for my Battle Network 4 playthrough. I know everyone says Red Sun has the better Souls, but the ones in Blue Moon didn't really blow me away. Sure, it had some great ones, but Team Proto Man has great ones across the board. You'll get so much out of these Souls because they're all so incredibly useful. And I mean, you can make a case against some of them, but hey, at least they're fun to use. When I was wrapping up my playthrough of 4 and maxing out all my SP chips, I barely found myself using the Souls, and I was mostly just abusing Air Hockey chips. Air Hockey's a great chip, by the way, no hate there. But in 5, these things almost become a necessity. And if you don't want to use a regular soul and would rather use one of the only game-breaking strats present in 5, say hello to Chaos Unison, which is like a dark, fucked up, twisted, evil version of the Soul Unison that allows for light players to actually use dark chips by fusing with them without the HP drain. Using such powerful chips does come at a cost though, and this time it's in the form of risk and reward. If you time your button press right, you'll be able to use that chip against your enemy, but if you mess up, Dark Mega Man shows up on the other side of the arena, you're snapped out of your transformation, and all hell breaks loose. Dark chips in general have just been improved so much since 4, even beyond Chaos Unison, because they're no longer chosen randomly for you and you can actually put them in your folder. And the best part about this is that I can appreciate it as a light player because they're so much more malleable than they were in 4 thanks to Chaos Unison. And I know some people rag on this stuff, but the chip selection and the folder building is great in Battle Network 5. Sure, it's a little bit difficult in the main story because you're limited to tier 1 viruses because they do this virus tiering thing that carries over from Battle Network 4, although thankfully you don't need to replay the game multiple times. But once you're in the post-game and everything opens up to you, it's like an entirely different game. There are so many different folders you can build, and there's more viable codes than just S people. And besides, the chip selection in Battle Network 5 is great anyways. There are so many fun chips to play around with or build folders around. Team Proto Man especially has this. There are so many great Team Proto Man exclusive Navi chips and the Giga chips. Where do I even begin? Death Phoenix, I love the Death Phoenix. It's such a fun game breaker once everything aligns correctly and you have the proper setup going on. I really cannot get over the fact I'm gonna have to play Team Colonel at some point in the future. It is not gonna be the same without this guy. I'm kind of dreading that, even though it's still the same high-quality game, but without all the cool Proto Man stuff. You know what I'm not dreading, though? Playing Battle Network 6, baby! And hopefully we'll see it at next year's Pekachow's Game Awards. And speaking of next year's Pekachow's Game Awards, well, I guess you guys can look forward to that because we're wrapping this year's up right now. But before we go, a quick little closing speech from yours truly. This year was one of the years of all time. Really just felt like a blur, if you ask me. Things moved by way too quickly. Surely I'm not the only one who felt that, right? It wasn't a bad year for me personally, though. Kind of felt nice to have a blur of a year where I could just kind of get myself together after the chaos that was last year. I kind of feel like I've recovered from all that chaos, feel like a new person, fresh palette. And also I got to do some pretty cool things this year, specifically on the Kirby fandom internet Pekachow side of things. Like obviously there was the Dream Display and my whole Dark Matter Trilogy retrospective that's still going on. I'm still cooking that Kirby 64 video. Trust me, it's going to be my best work yet, I hope. And I got to go on the Found of Dreams podcast too, which was fun. Nice Kirby podcast. You should check it out if you haven't. I'm still stuck in 2K subscriber purgatory though, which sucks. Please just let me out already. I'm almost there. Mark my words, next month I'll be free. But anyways, thanks to all my friends and all my viewers who make all this stuff possible. Thank you guys so much for getting me this far. But I got some other things in the pipeline, and hopefully you guys won't have to wait too long to see what I'm cooking. But I'm feeling good. Hopefully we can get a little more of a consistent schedule next year, starting from scratch. I'm gonna aim for something bi-monthly at least, but we'll see how that works out. So if you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And if you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe. Also, I have a Twitter. The link is in the description. And thanks for tuning in. Have a happy new year, everyone. I'll be off playing some of these awesome games I got for Christmas, and I'll see you all next year. And with all that said, Pekachow out!